The rain fell in a steady drizzle, blurring the lights of Seattle's skyline into a hazy glow. Sarah Miller sat on the sagging couch in her one-bedroom apartment in Rainier Valley, the kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors' arguments and the radiator hissed more than it heated. Her phone screen cast a faint blue light across her face, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes. She typed with trembling fingers, each word a small surrender of her pride. "Michael, I hate to ask again, but I need $50 for Noah's formula. I'll get paid next week. Promise I'll pay you back." She hesitated, thumb hovering over the send button. The baby monitor on the coffee table crackled with the soft, rhythmic breathing of her 8-month-old son Noah, asleep in the crib she'd bought secondhand. Her bank account held $327, the last of her savings after being laid off from her accounting job at a small firm 2 months ago. The formula was running low, and she'd already stretched the last bottle with a little extra water, a decision that gnawed at her conscience. Swallowing her shame, she hit send. Sarah leaned back, her head resting against the couch's threadbare fabric. The weight of the day, job applications unanswered, a late rent notice taped to her door, the constant hum of worry, pressed down on her. She was 28, a single mother, and every choice felt like a tightrope walk over a void. Michael, her older brother, had moved to a better job across town, leaving her without the safety net of his occasional grocery drop-offs or emergency loans. She hated asking him for help, but Noah's hunger trumped her pride every time. Across the city, in a glass and steel tower in downtown Seattle, Nathan Brooks sat in his corner office at Cascade Innovations. The CEO's desk was cluttered with reports about a looming acquisition, a deal that could cement his company's place as a leader in renewable energy tech. At 45, Nathan was a man who thrived on control, his salt and pepper hair and sharp jawline, softened only by the laugh lines around his eyes. His phone buzzed on the polished mahogany, and he glanced at it, expecting another update from his CFO, Richard Langston, about the acquisition terms. Instead, the screen displayed a message from an unknown number, the desperate plea from Sarah. Nathan frowned, running a hand through his hair. His personal number was closely guarded, shared only with a handful of trusted contacts. This was clearly a wrong number, a glitch in the digital ether. He could have ignored it, deleted the message, and returned to the spreadsheets demanding his attention. But something in the raw urgency of the words, Noah's formula, "I'll pay you back," stopped him. He pictured a stranger, alone, counting pennies for a child's next meal. It stirred a memory he kept buried, his son Ethan, who would have been 10 this year if leukemia hadn't stolen him 5 years ago. Nathan typed before he could second-guess himself. "I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Michael." Sarah's phone pinged, and her heart sank as she read the reply. Horror washed over her as she checked the number, off by 1 digit, a careless typo in her exhaustion. "I'm so sorry," she typed back, her cheeks burning. "Please ignore that. Wrong number." She tossed the phone onto the couch, mortification mingling with her fatigue. Another failure in a string of them. Losing her job, missing rent, now begging a stranger by mistake. She pressed her palms to her eyes, willing herself not to cry. In his office, Nathan stared at Sarah's apology. He should have let it go, replied politely, and moved on. But the mention of a baby, the palpable desperation in her words, tugged at him. The acquisition negotiations had been relentless, a grind of numbers and egos that left him feeling hollow. This, at least, was something real, something human. "Is your baby going to be okay?" he typed, surprising himself with the question. Sarah blinked at the response, confusion cutting through her embarrassment. Why would a stranger care? Her first instinct was caution. She'd read enough about online scams to know better than to engage. But exhaustion dulled her defenses, and the question felt oddly sincere. "We'll manage," she replied curtly. "Sorry to bother you." The response came almost instantly. "I could help. No strings attached." Sarah snorted, a bitter edge to the sound. In her experience, there were always strings. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers," she wrote, her fingers firm despite her wavering resolve. The reply was quick. "Smart policy. I'm Nathan. Now I'm not a stranger. What formula does Noah need? She stared at the message, torn between suspicion and a flicker of hope. Why would someone offer to help a random person? She chewed her lip, glancing at the baby monitor. Noah's formula was Similac sensitive, the only brand that didn't upset his stomach, but it cost $30 a can, a luxury she could barely afford. Why would you help someone you don't know? She typed, her guard still up. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the Seattle skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Why, indeed, his assistant, Emily, would say he was avoiding the acquisition documents. His ex-wife, Claire, would call it another impulsive act of his savior complex. Both would be half right. Let's just say I've been fortunate, he replied. And I remember when I wasn't. It wasn't the whole truth. His wealth came from years of calculated risks, not just luck. But it was close enough. Sarah's exhaustion clouded her judgment. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours straight, in weeks, her nights interrupted by Noah's cries or her own spiraling thoughts. I don't feel right about this, she typed, but added her Venmo username anyway. What did she have to lose? She could block this Nathan if things got strange. Seconds later, her phone buzzed with a notification. Her breath caught. $500, not $50, had landed in her account. This is too much, she typed frantically. I can't accept this. Consider it an advance for the next few months, Nathan replied. One less thing to worry about. Sarah's vision blurred, with tears. She hadn't cried when she was laid off, or when Michael moved away, or even when the landlord's notice arrived. But this unexpected kindness from a stranger undid her. Thank you, she typed, the words inadequate for the relief flooding her chest. You're welcome, Sarah, came the reply. Take care of Noah. She didn't sleep much that night, her mind churning. The money meant formula, groceries, maybe even catching up on the electric bill. But as she carried Noah to the corner store, the next morning a chill settled over her. She hadn't told Nathan her son's name or her own. How did he know? The next morning, Sarah woke to another message from Nathan. Hope you and Noah had a better night. I have a proposition for you. Her guard shot up, the flicker of gratitude replaced by suspicion. Here it comes, she thought, the inevitable catch. What kind of proposition, she replied, her tone wary. Professional, not personal, Nathan responded quickly. I run a company called Cascade Innovations. We need someone with accounting skills for a short-term project. Your brother Michael mentioned you were looking for work. Sarah nearly dropped her phone. How do you know my brother? How do you know? I'm an accountant? Her heart raced as she checked her social media. Everything was private, locked down after too many creepy messages when she was pregnant. Who are you? Nathan's reply was measured. I apologize for the intrusion. Your number is close to Michael Davis's, who works in my HR department. When I mentioned the wrong number text, he realized it was you. He speaks highly of your skills. Sarah sank onto the couch, relief and unease battling within her. Michael had mentioned working at some tech company, but she'd never paid much attention. Could this really be a coincidence? So this was all just chance? She typed. Completely, Nathan replied. But maybe a fortunate one. We need help reconciling accounts before an acquisition. It's a 3-month contract with potential for more. Interested in interviewing? Her mind raced. It seemed too perfect, too convenient. She'd sent out dozens of resumes with no bites, and now this. But Michael did work in HR, and the daycare at Cascade Innovations, researched on her phone during the bus ride to the store, sounded like a lifeline for Noah. I'd be interested, she typed cautiously, but I'd need flexibility. I have Noah, and childcare is tough. We offer on-site daycare and flexible hours, Nathan replied. Come in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Reception will expect you. Sarah prepared Noah's bottle, her movements automatic but her thoughts anything but. The offer was a godsend, yet something nagged at her. The timing, the coincidence, Nathan's knowledge of Noah's name. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite see. With her savings gone, and rent due though, could she afford to question it? Cascade Innovations headquarters rose like a beacon above downtown Seattle, its glass facade reflecting the gray clouds scudding across the sky. Sarah adjusted Noah's carrier on her arm, smoothing her thrifted blazer, still crisp, if a little worn at the cuffs. The revolving doors loomed ahead, and she took a deep breath before stepping inside. The lobby was a study in modern opulence. Marble floors, a living wall of greenery, and a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. "Sarah Miller?" the security guard asked before she could speak, his smile professional but warm. At her nod, he gestured to the elevators. "Ms. Carter will meet you upstairs, top floor." The efficiency unnerved her. Job interviews for temp accounting roles didn't usually involve personal escorts. Emily Carter, Nathan's assistant, met her at the elevator, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense air. She led Sarah not to an HR office but to a corner suite with panoramic views of Puget Sound. "Mr. Brooks will be with you shortly," Emily said, gesturing to a plush leather couch. "Coffee? Water?" "Water, please," Sarah replied, settling Noah's carrier beside her. He was asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling, oblivious to the surreal turn their lives had taken. The office was warmer than she'd expected for a CEO's domain. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with titles on engineering and philosophy. A guitar leaned in a corner, an odd contrast to the sleek desk where family photos sat. A young boy, a woman, a life that seemed both distant and cherished. "He looks peaceful," a deep voice said from the doorway. Sarah turned to find a tall man in a tailored suit, his athletic build softened by the lines around his eyes. This, she realized, was Nathan Brooks, the stranger who'd sent her $500. "Mr. Brooks," she said, standing quickly, "thank you for seeing me." "Nathan, please," he corrected, his handshake firm but brief. "And thank you for coming on short notice." There was an awkward pause, both of them aware of the bizarre circumstances that had brought them. "Here, I should explain the texts," Nathan said, sitting across from her. "I don't make a habit of sending money to wrong numbers." "And I don't make a habit of accepting it," Sarah countered, finding her voice. "I'm still not comfortable with how this happened." Nathan nodded, respecting her bluntness. "Fair. The truth is, your message came at a strange moment. Yesterday was the anniversary of my son's death." Sarah's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." "Ethan would have been 10, Nathan continued, his gaze drifting to Noah. "Leukemia. When I saw your text about formula, it felt personal. A chance to help someone the way I couldn't help him." The explanation disarmed her, melting some of her suspicion. "And the job?" she asked cautiously. "Legitimate," Nathan assured her. "The connection with Michael was a coincidence. He recognized your situation when I mentioned the text. He's worried about you." Sarah flushed. "Michael doesn't know how bad things got. I didn't want to burden him." "Family pride," Nathan said with a knowing smile. "I get that." He handed her a folder. "This is the position. 3 months, full benefits, competitive salary. We're preparing for an acquisition and need someone to reconcile accounts." Sarah scanned the documents, her accounting training kicking in. The salary was more than she'd earned at her last job, enough to stabilize her life. "This is generous for a temp role." "We pay for quality," Nathan said. "Michael showed me your resume. 3 years at Larson & Co., top of your class at UW. You're overqualified, if anything." Emily returned with water, giving Sarah a moment to process. The job was real, the money a lifeline. But the question lingered. "Why didn't you tell me who you were from the start?" Nathan sipped his coffee, considering. "Would you have believed me? Hi, I'm a CEO, let me help?" "Probably not," Sarah admitted. "And this is unorthodox," he added. "The board would raise eyebrows if I personally recruited a candidate." Noah stirred, his soft whimpers signaling hunger. Sarah reached for her diaper bag. "May I?" Nathan asked, gesturing to a door. "There's a kitchenette there, more private." She nodded, grateful, and slipped into a small, well-equipped break room. As she prepared Noah's bottle, her mind churned. The job checked out. Her quick Google search on the bus had confirmed Cascade's reputation, but the coincidence still felt too neat. When she returned, Nathan was on the phone, his voice tense. "I don't care what Kessler thinks. We're not cutting that team. I gave my word." He ended the call as she entered. "Sorry. Acquisition talks are brutal." "Sounds complicated," Sarah said, settling Noah in her arms. "Business usually is," Nathan replied, watching her feed Noah with a softness in his eyes. "You're good with him." "Had to be," Sarah said quietly. "His father left when I told him I was pregnant. It's just us." Nathan's expression darkened. "His loss." They discussed the job, hours, responsibilities, the project, timeline. Sarah relaxed as they delved into accounting details, familiar ground. "One last thing," Nathan said as they wrapped up. "Our daycare has a wait list, but you can work from my office suite. There's a conference room, and Noah's—" "Welcome," Sarah blinked. "That's unusually accommodating." "We need your skills," Nathan said, though his tone hinted at more. "And the work is sensitive. Acquisition details stay confidential." Emily appeared. "Mr. Brooks, your 10:30 is waiting." Nathan stood, offering his hand. "So, Sarah Miller, do we have a deal?" She hesitated, then shook his hand. "Yes, thank you." "Perfect. Emily will handle the paperwork. Start Monday." He paused. "And the $500 was a gift, not a loan. No need to pay it back." Before she could protest, he was gone, leaving Sarah with Noah, a new job, and a nagging sense that her life had just veered onto an unpredictable path. Sarah Miller's first week at Cascade Innovations felt like stepping into a parallel universe. Each morning, she and Noah took the bus from their Rainier Valley apartment to downtown Seattle, the city's gray drizzle giving way to the gleaming tower of Cascade's headquarters. Emily Carter, Nathan's assistant, greeted them daily with a warm smile and a coffee for Sarah, her efficiency softening the corporate edge of the top floor. The small conference room adjacent to Nathan's office had been transformed into Sarah's workspace, a sleek desk with dual monitors, a stack of financial reports, and a portable crib where Noah napped or played with colorful toys Emily had somehow procured. The setup was almost too perfect, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. The job itself was a lifeline. The salary, $85,000 for the 3-month contract, prorated from a full-time role, meant Sarah could pay her overdue rent, stock up on formula, and even set aside a small emergency fund. The work was challenging but familiar, a return to the accounting she'd excelled at before Noah's birth upended her career. Cascade was preparing for a major acquisition of a rival renewable energy firm, and Sarah's task was to reconcile discrepancies in the financial records to ensure a clean deal. The spreadsheets were dense, filled with transactions spanning years, but Sarah thrived on untangling numbers. It was the one area of her life where she still felt in control. By the end of her second week, though, control began to slip. Late on a Thursday afternoon, with Noah babbling happily on a playmat, Sarah noticed a pattern in the acquisition accounts. Small discrepancies, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, appeared across multiple ledgers, each offset by adjustments that looked legitimate but didn't quite add up. The variances were subtle, buried in complex transactions, but they were too consistent to be accidental. Sarah cross-referenced the data, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The trail led to a series of transfers to an offshore account labeled as consulting fees, but the recipient company, Pacific Ventures, had no online presence or verifiable records. "These numbers don't add up," Sarah muttered, zooming in on a spreadsheet. Noah gurgled, tossing a plastic ring that clattered against the crib. She glanced at him, her heart swelling despite the unease creeping up her spine. This wasn't just sloppy accounting, it suggested something deliberate, something hidden. A soft knock interrupted her focus. Nathan stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, his face etched with fatigue. "Making progress?" he asked, crouching to greet Noah, who squealed and reached for him. The baby had taken an inexplicable shine to Nathan, his tiny hands grabbing at the CEO's cufflinks whenever he appeared. "Some," Sarah said, watching their interaction with a mix of warmth and caution. But I found something concerning in the acquisition accounts. She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Nathan's openness, his willingness to accommodate Noah, his personal gesture with the $500, had disarmed her, but the memory of his unexplained knowledge of her name still lingered. "Show me," Nathan said, his tone shifting to sharp focus. He pulled a chair beside her, his presence steady but intense. Sarah pulled up the files, walking him through the pattern. "These transfers to Pacific Ventures, small amounts spread across multiple accounts, total about $2.8 million over the past 15 months. The adjustments are clever, designed to look like routine corrections, but they're covering something up." Nathan's expression darkened as he studied the screen. "You're sure? It's why you hired me, isn't it?" Sarah countered, her voice steady. "To find this kind of thing." A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed Nathan's face. "Yes, of course." He stood, running a hand through his hair. "Prepare a report. But don't share this with anyone yet, not even Michael." "Not even your CFO?" Sarah asked, surprised. Richard Langston, Cascade's chief financial officer, was the logical person to loop in on financial irregularities. Nathan's jaw tightened. "Especially, not Richard, not until we know more." The directive unsettled her. Why would the CEO bypass his own CFO? After Nathan left, promising to follow up, Sarah sat back, her mind racing. She tried to focus on the numbers, but the seed of doubt had taken root. Was Nathan hiding something, or was he protecting her from a bigger mess? Noah's soft coos grounded her, a reminder of why she was here. Stability for her son, no matter the cost. That evening, in the now warmer apartment, thanks to a paid electric bill, Sarah put Noah to bed and opened her laptop. She couldn't resist digging deeper. A quick search on Pacific Ventures yielded nothing but dead ends, but cross-referencing Cascade's records revealed the transfers began shortly after Richard Langston's appointment as CFO, following the abrupt departure of his predecessor. The timing was too convenient to ignore. By midnight, Sarah had compiled a timeline, her notes scrawled in a spiral notebook beside her laptop. The discrepancies aligned with Richard's tenure, and the offshore account's lack of transparency screamed money laundering. She rubbed her eyes, exhaustion warring with adrenaline. This was bigger than she'd expected, and Nathan's secrecy only deepened her unease. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Cascade earlier than usual, determined to confront Nathan before the day's meetings. Noah was fussier than usual, sensing her tension, and she rocked his carrier gently as she rode the elevator to the top floor. Nathan's office was dark, unusual for a man who seemed to live at work. A text lit up her phone. "Emergency board meeting. Use the time to finish your report. We'll talk later." And the vague message did little to calm her. She settled Noah in his play area, surrounded by toys, and dove back into the records, expanding her search to include older transactions. By noon, her suspicions had hardened into certainty. Someone high up was siphoning funds, and the sophistication suggested intimate knowledge of Cascade's financial systems. The trail pointed directly at Richard Langston. Sarah was so engrossed that she didn't notice the figure in her doorway until he spoke. "Ms. Miller," Richard Langston said, his voice smooth but cold. "Hard at work, I see." She startled, instinctively minimizing her screen. Richard was imposing, tall, with a polished suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Langston," she said, forcing calm. "Can I help you?" "I understand you're working on a special project." "For Nathan," he said, stepping into the room. His gaze flicked to Noah, who watched him with wide, solemn eyes. "Convenient arrangement you have here. Private office, bringing your child to work. Nathan must think highly of your skills." The insinuation stung, and Sarah's cheeks burned. "Mr. Brooks values efficiency," she said stiffly, "and I found issues that needed addressing." "I'm sure you have," Richard replied, his tone implying something entirely different. "Just remember, Ms. Miller, Cascade was thriving before you arrived, and it will long after your contract ends. He left without another word, but the air felt heavier, charged with threat. Sarah sat trembling, anger and fear mixing in her chest. Richard's visit confirmed he saw her as a problem, but his words also suggested others might misinterpret her arrangement with Nathan as something inappropriate. The thought made her stomach churn. Her phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. "Sarah Miller speaking," she answered, her voice professional despite her racing heart. "Ms. Miller, this is Detective Laura Bennett with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division," a brisk female voice said. "I understand you're employed at Cascade Innovations." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Yes, that's correct. We're investigating irregularities in Cascade's accounts. I'd like to ask you some questions this afternoon, if possible, at our office." I'm not sure what I can tell you," Sarah stammered, glancing at Noah, who clutched a toy truck. "We'll keep it brief," Bennett said. "Can you make it by 2 p.m.? Sarah agreed, her mind reeling. After hanging up, she paced the small conference room, Noah's babbling a distant hum. The FBI, Richard's veiled threats, Nathan's secrecy. It was all converging too fast. When Nathan finally returned at 3 p.m., his face pale and tie askew, Sarah couldn't hold back. She pulled him into his office, closing the door. "The FBI called me," she blurted. "Financial crimes. They want me for questioning. And Richard was here, acting like I'm some kind of threat." Nathan cursed under his breath. "Damn it. This is moving faster than I thought." He paced, then turned to her with intensity. "Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" she echoed, incredulous. "Nathan, what's going on? Am I being set up?" "No," he said firmly. "The opposite. I haven't been entirely honest about why I hired you." He unlocked a desk drawer and pulled out a thick file. "Your wrong number text wasn't random. I've been investigating internal theft at Cascade for months. We needed an outsider, someone with no ties to the executive team." Sarah felt the floor tilt. "You targeted me? Your brother mentioned you months ago. Your skills, your situation," Nathan said, his voice urgent. "When we needed someone we could trust, I remembered. The text was a coincidence, but when I realized it was you, I saw an opportunity." "You manipulated me," Sarah whispered, thinking of Noah, of how vulnerable they'd been. "You used my desperation." "I gave you a legitimate job you're damn good at," Nathan countered. "Yes, I had ulterior motives, but not the kind you're thinking. I'm working with the FBI, Sarah. Richard isn't just embezzling, he's laundering money through our international divisions." Sarah sank into a chair, her head spinning. "The detective who called, is she real? Laura Bennett?" "Yes," Nathan confirmed. "But be careful what you tell her. We don't know who else is involved." Before Sarah could respond, Emily burst in, her usual composure gone. "Nathan, they're here. Board security and the FBI. They're saying you've been embezzling, and they mentioned Sarah as an accomplice." Sarah clutched Noah's carrier, terror washing over her. "This can't be happening." Nathan's face hardened. "Emily, take Sarah and Noah to the safe house. Use the private elevator." "Safe house?" Sarah repeated, feeling like she'd stumbled into a movie. "Nathan, I can't just—" "Listen," he interrupted, gripping her shoulders. "Richard knows you found evidence. He's framing us both. If you stay, they'll question you and could separate you from Noah." The thought of losing Noah, even temporarily, galvanized her. She grabbed his things while Emily collected the files from her desk. "What about you?" Sarah asked as they moved toward a hidden door behind Nathan's bookshelf. "I'll handle it," Nathan said grimly. "I have allies on the board. Stay safe until I contact you." He hesitated, his voice softening. "I'm sorry for not being honest, but everything else, how I feel about you and Noah, that's real." Before Sarah could process his words, Emily was guiding her through a hidden passage to a private elevator, leaving Nathan to face the storm alone. The safe house was a modest apartment in a quiet Bellevue suburb, its windows overlooking a tree-lined street. Sarah paced the living room, Noah asleep in a portable crib Emily had arranged, along with diapers, formula, and groceries. "You seem prepared for this," Sarah said, watching Emily organize supplies in the kitchen. "Nathan's always been careful," Emily replied, her expression serious. "When the discrepancies started 6 months ago, he knew something was wrong. He went to the authorities, but Richard has powerful friends. The first investigation was shut down for lack of evidence." "So this was planned?" Sarah asked, grappling with betrayal and the reality of Nathan's intentions. "Not you," Emily said, her eyes softening. "The text was a coincidence, but Nathan saw a chance to bring in someone with no ties to Richard's network. Your skills were exactly what we needed." Sarah sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. "And now I'm hiding while Nathan might be arrested for crimes he didn't commit." "Nathan can handle himself," Emily assured her, though worry creased her brow. "He's been preparing for this." Hours passed with no word. Sarah reviewed the files Emily had saved, searching for anything to help Nathan. Around midnight, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Are you safe?" "Yes," she typed cautiously. "Is this—" "It's me," Nathan replied. "Had to ditch my phone. Police took my devices but released me for now. Richard's playing this carefully, making it look like he found the embezzlement." "What now?" Sarah asked. "We use your evidence. My FBI contact, Laura Bennett, wants to meet tomorrow, 10 a.m. If you're willing, you can explain it better than anyone." Sarah glanced at Noah, sleeping peacefully. Agreeing meant stepping into danger, making herself a target. She could take the money she'd saved and leave Seattle, start over somewhere safe. But running would let Richard escape justice, and abandon Nathan, who despite his deception had given her a chance to rebuild. "I'll be there," she typed. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the safe house in Bellevue, casting slatted shadows across the living room. Sarah Miller sat on the edge of the couch, her coffee untouched, as she reviewed her notes. One last time. Noah slept in the portable crib, his tiny chest rising and falling, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Sarah's laptop screen glowed with the evidence she'd compiled. Spreadsheets, transaction logs, and a detailed report outlining Richard Langston's embezzlement scheme at Cascade Innovations. Today, she would face the FBI and, indirectly, Richard himself. The thought sent a shiver through her, but running wasn't an option, not when she held the truth that could clear Nathan Brooks and bring justice. Emily Carter arrived at 8 a.m., her usual efficiency tempered by a reassuring smile. "Ready?" she asked, setting down a bag of fresh diapers and a stuffed bear for Noah. "As I'll ever be," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. She kissed Noah's forehead, tucking the bear beside him. "Take care of him, Emily." "Always," Emily said, her eyes softening. "Nathan's waiting downtown. You've got this." The nondescript office building near Pioneer Square felt out of place against Seattle's sleek skyline, its plain brick facade hiding the weight of what was about to unfold. Nathan met Sarah at the entrance, his face haggard but his eyes bright with relief when he saw her. "You came," he said, his voice carrying a gratitude that made her chest tighten. "I almost didn't," Sarah admitted, adjusting her blazer. "Part of me thinks this is insane." "It is," Nathan agreed, guiding her inside with a gentle hand at her back. "But it's necessary." Inside, Agent Laura Bennett waited in a sparse meeting room, her sharp eyes scanning Sarah as they shook hands. "Ms. Miller, thank you for coming. Mr. Brooks says you've uncovered significant evidence." Sarah nodded, setting her laptop on the table. For the next hour, she walked Bennett through her findings, the $2.8 million siphoned through Pacific Ventures, the falsified adjustments, the timeline aligning with Richard Langston's appointment as CFO. Her accounting background shone as she explained the intricate web of transactions, her voice growing steadier with each slide. Nathan sat silently, his presence a quiet anchor. "This is exactly what we needed," Bennett said when Sarah finished, her tone clipped but approving. "Clear evidence of embezzlement and money laundering." She turned to Nathan. "The board meeting's this afternoon. Richard will be there, along with his allies. They're planning to accuse you and vote you out." Nathan nodded. "Perfect. We'll be ready." The plan was risky but straightforward. Nathan would attend the board meeting at Cascade's headquarters, as expected, letting Richard present his falsified accusations. Sarah would wait in an adjacent room with Bennett and her team, ready to enter with the evidence once Richard committed to his lies. The timing had to be precise. They needed him to incriminate himself in front of witnesses and federal agents. As they prepared to leave, Nathan pulled Sarah aside. "If this goes wrong," he said quietly, "Emily has instructions to get you and Noah out of the country. There's an account in your name with enough to start over." Sarah stared at him, stunned by the depth of his planning. "It won't come to that," she said, her confidence more for herself than him. "Just in case," Nathan insisted, pressing a small envelope into her hand. "And Sarah, thank you for trusting me, even after everything." She tucked the eyes-eye envelope into her bag, her emotions a tangle of gratitude and lingering hurt. Nathan's deception about her hiring still stung, but his actions since, the job, the accommodations for Noah, the respect for her work, felt genuine. "Let's just get through this," she said, meeting his gaze. The boardroom at Cascade. Innovations was a stark contrast to the safe house's coziness. A long glass table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Puget Sound, and a dozen executives in tailored suits. Sarah watched from an adjacent conference room via a monitor, her heart pounding as Richard Langston stood to address the board. His face was a mask of solemn duty, but his eyes glinted with calculation. "It pains me to present these findings," Richard began, distributing folders to the board members. "But the evidence is clear. Nathan Brooks, with the assistance of an outside accomplice, Sarah Miller, has been diverting company funds to offshore accounts." Sarah's stomach twisted at the mention of her name, the accusation delivered with chilling precision. On the monitor, Nathan remained calm, his hands folded on the table. "That's a serious claim, Richard," he said evenly. "I assume you have proof." "The proof is in front of you," Richard replied smoothly. "Financial records don't lie." "No, they don't," Nathan agreed, his tone steady. He nodded toward the door, their signal. Agent Bennett opened the door, and Sarah entered the boardroom, flanked by 2 FBI agents. The air shifted, a ice-high ripple of surprise passing through the room. Richard's composure faltered for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "Ms. Miller," he said coldly. "How convenient. Here to defend your benefactor?" "Actually," Sarah replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands, "I'm here to explain how you've been stealing from Cascade for the past 15 months. For the next 30 minutes, Sarah dismantled Richard's narrative with surgical precision. She projected her spreadsheets onto the boardroom screen, detailing the transfers to Pacific Ventures, the falsified adjustments, and the shell companies linked to Richard. "The pattern begins 3 weeks after Mr. Langston became CFO," she concluded, her voice unwavering. "The money trail leads to accounts where he's the beneficial owner." Richard's face grew pale, his fingers tightening around his pen. He glanced toward the door as if calculating an escape. "Don't," Bennett warned, her hand resting on her holster. "The building is secured." What happened next was a blur. Richard lunged across the table, a pen flashing in his hand, whether as a weapon or a desperate gesture Sarah couldn't tell. Nathan moved faster, stepping between them, his arm raised to block Richard. Shouts erupted as the FBI agents tackled Richard to the floor, restraining him. Sarah's heart raced as she saw blood seeping through Nathan's sleeve. "Alex!" she cried, instinctively using his first name. "It's just a scratch," Nathan said, grimacing but waving her off. "Though I'll need a new shirt for the rest of this meeting." The room descended into chaos as 2 board members, implicated in Richard's scheme, tried to slip out but were detained by security. Sarah stood frozen, clutching her laptop, as Bennett took control, issuing orders to her team. Nathan's injury was minor, a shallow cut from the pen, but the adrenaline left Sarah shaking. 3 hours later, the boardroom was empty, Richard and his allies in custody. Sarah sat in Nathan's office, Noah in her arms, as Emily brought in a stuffed elephant for him to play with. The day's events felt surreal, like a fever dream. Nathan, his arm bandaged, sat across from her, his exhaustion mirrored in her own. "So, what happens now?" Sarah asked, watching Noah gnaw on. "The elephant's ear. Professionally damage control," Nathan said. "The company will survive, but the acquisition might be delayed." He hesitated, his eyes meeting hers. "Personally, that depends on you." "Me?" Sarah asked, surprised. "Your contract has 2 months left," Nathan said. "But I'd like to offer you a permanent role, head of internal audit, reporting directly to the board for independence." Sarah blinked. "That's a big jump." "You've earned it," Nathan said sincerely. "You saw what seasoned executives missed or ignored. Cascade needs your integrity." She looked at Noah, now dozing against her chest. "And Noah." "A spot opened in the company daycare," Nathan said with a small smile, "though he's welcome here any time." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sarah, I know how this started wasn't ideal. I manipulated the situation to get you here, and I'm sorry. But getting to know you, seeing you with Noah, watching your brilliance, that's been the most real thing in my life since Ethan." Sarah's heart fluttered, a mix of warmth and caution. Nathan's deception had hurt, but his actions since had shown a man trying to do right, even at personal cost. "I need time to think," she said honestly. "This has been a lot." "Of course," Nathan agreed. "Take all the time you need." 6 months later, Cascade Innovations' annual holiday party filled the top floor with laughter and clinking glasses. Sarah, now settled as head of internal audit, stood near the dessert table, watching her team receive applause for implementing new financial safeguards. Noah, toddling unsteadily, moved between her and Nathan, who had become more than her boss. Their relationship had grown slowly, built on shared coffee breaks, late-night work sessions, and quiet moments with Noah. The engagement ring on her finger, new and still a little unfamiliar, caught the light as Nathan took her hand. "Ready for the announcement?" he whispered. Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand. The board knew about their relationship. Transparency was her mantra now, professionally and personally. As Nathan called for attention and shared their engagement, the room erupted in cheers. Sarah looked at Noah, clutching a toy car, and thought of the wrong number text that had started it all, a desperate plea that found the right person. Later, in their new home in Capitol Hill, Sarah tucked Noah into bed, Nathan beside her. The 3 of them were a family, forged through chance and choice. "Sometimes," she whispered, kissing Noah's forehead, "the mistakes we think will break us lead us exactly where we're meant to be."